You are now listening to the Box Seat Boys podcast.
What's up, guys? It's Josh from the Box Seat Boys back with episode 3, and today we're going to do things a little differently. The first 2 episodes, we just kind of ran through some things. I wanted a little bit more structure to what we were doing. So right now, the way it's going to go is we're going to have the first section be kind of a news section, just go over some of the weekly, or what happened in the past week, I should say. Not sure if we're going to have a name for it, if it's just going to be the news section, whatever it is, but I'm sure we'll come up with a name. And the second section, which today I'm going to have 2, is going to be a consistent weekly thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it as a Vegas style feel to it, with against the spread picks, over under what I think some good matchups are. I'm a big sports betting guy. I enjoy looking at the spreads and everything like that, not just picking games straight up. So that's kind of the feel that we're going to go with today. Just to start with the news section,
Box Seat Boys Sports Headlines.
We're going to go into the Red Sox hiring Alex Cora. I think that's a great hire for them. He had a 14-year career. Wasn't a superstar. By no means was he a superstar. He was an infielder, primarily shortstop, second base. Played a little bit of third. He batted around 240, a little over 240. Had under 1,000 hits in his career. So, he wasn't that 3,000 hit guy or anything like that. But what he is he's a student of the game. He was very serviceable as a player. He knew the game. Not saying you wanted him up in the most clutch situations, but he knew situational hitting. He's a bench coach right now, which for the Astros is something is a positive thing for Red Sox fans. You see the passion that Houston has. They have a lot of young guys. I'm hoping he can bring that passion to Boston with some of the young guys that we have. You see Benintendi and Mookie Betts have that passion. I want to see that out of, Devers and, for instance, Bogarts. He kind of just seems like he's going through the motions at times. I really want to see what his coaching style and philosophy does for the Red Sox. Everybody in the Astros organization, players, coaches, everything seemed to really like the guy, like to be around him. So that's encouraging. Carlos Beltran went on and, did an interview after he heard, and he said that Alex Cora is super intense, which is a good thing if he can bring that to the Red Sox. If he doesn't mesh well, there's a lot of personalities on this Red Sox team that could lead to a downfall. Not saying that that's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. I really do like Alex Cora as the pick there. I think his intensity, along with his ability to relate to the players. I mean, he wasn't in the league that long ago. He retired in 2011. So it's not like he played in the 70s or anything like that. He was playing only a few years ago. So I really do think that that's going to bode well with some of these younger guys. Have that same mentality, the intensity, everything like that. He's a younger guy. He's not a 60-year-old manager or anything like that. He's only 42. So I really do like the hire. I really think that he's going to bring a little bit of a spark and life back to this Red Sox team. More than some of them already have. I know you see it in some of the guys, especially like a Chris Sale. I want to see that in all 9 guys. You know, you see it in other teams, and it would be great to see back in Boston. The next thing, Steph Curry, I want to kind of get into him a little bit. I don't want to touch on this too much, but I definitely feel like it needs some attention. Steph Curry got fined $50,000 for throwing his mouthpiece and then proceeded to follow the referee. And I don't know if he yelled, anything obscene or anything like that, but he did, point his finger at him and follow him around and at least chirp a little bit. The thing that surprised me was actually no suspension. It's not the first time this has happened. It might be the first time that he's thrown his mouthpiece at the referee, but not the first time he's thrown his mouthpiece, as everyone probably remembers. Udonis Haslem, from different analysts in sports, talk about Udonis Haslem, how back in the day he was suspended for a similar incident. Now, I don't know exactly, I didn't look at a video or anything like that, but if it's anything similar and he got suspended, you have precedent there that shows he should have been suspended. If there's any sort of, hey, this happened in the past, this is kind of how we're going to approach it, that shows you right there that he should have been suspended, especially because it wasn't his first offense. Steph Curry is just one of those guys that he's getting progressively worse. He's turning into that Draymond Green, type attitude. And I don't know why he's all of a sudden has this kind of chip on his shoulder. It was different. He kind of let the playing do the talking. Now it's a little bit different as far as what I'm seeing anyway. I think he should have been suspended. Give him a 3-game suspension. Let him sit on the bench. Let him learn his lesson. But no games is kind of absurd to me. That's absurd. You got to give some sort of suspension, because what's to say he's not going to do it again? And then what, are you going to suspend him 1 game or fine him $100,000? I mean, the way he acted it's not like he was hammered either when he wanted the foul call. He was, if he was fouled, he was barely touched. So his overreaction, throwing the mouthpiece, following the ref, continuing to yell after he was already ejected, that should serve a suspension. That should be something that everyone should take note of. Like, okay, Steph Curry did this, he got suspended, he's one of the stars of the league, let's not push our limits. Now people are saying, okay, this is not the first time he's done this, he did it again, he just got fined. Maybe next time I get fouled, I'll say something to the referee. You don't necessarily have to throw a mouthpiece, but people are going to be, they're going to take notice around the league. So by, I don't want to say making an example, but by, letting him off, you're opening up referees to take more harassment in the future. So I think the NBA should have taken a look at this a little bit deeper, and made a call, even if it was 1 game. I think that 3 to 5 game range would have been good, but even if you just, you make him sit 1 game, just as kind of that example, like, hey, this is not how we're going to act in this league. But nothing, just 50,000. That was a little bit surprising to me. The last piece for this news section is the World Series starts tonight. We have the Astros versus the Dodgers. Game 1 is Keuchel versus Kershaw on the mound. And the way I look at it is, this is whoever wins this series. It's not like the Yankees are going to win back-to-back or, whoever. I mean, Houston's never won a World Series. This is their first appearance since 2005. This is the first Dodgers World Series, I believe, in 29 years or something like that. So, both teams are due. It's not like it was last year with the Cubs and what was it, 108 years and then 50-something years for the Indians. It's not quite that extent, not that extreme. But I think it's going to be a good series. We have good pitching, pretty good lineups. Really good lineups, I should say. Of late, they're pretty good. You haven't seen Houston hit as well as they could. Kind of my takeaways for this. Altuve and Gurriel, is that how you pronounce it? Not sure if that's how you pronounce it. They're the only two Astros batting over 300 now. The Red Sox series, it seemed like everyone and their mother was batting over 300 against the Red Sox. And now, after the ALCS, only two still over the 300 mark. And no surprise, Altuve is one of them there. In comparison, the Dodgers have 5 guys in their lineup over 300. So, in my mind, just because of the who's hot right now, I got to give the edge to the Dodgers in that sense. I mean, if they continue to stay hot, they're going to be tough to beat. They're going to be tough to shut down. Kershaw, he had that stigma. He had that stigma of being bad in the playoffs, and he has an opportunity to give his team a 1-0 series lead in the World Series, which is huge in the World Series. Any series, but especially the World Series. This is not the time to go back to your old ways of being bad, Kershaw. You're 2-0 right now. You had really good outings in both wins. You've had 3 total outings. Got a no decision in one of them. I really do think he kind of turned it around. It happens, guys slump in the postseason, stuff like that. I really think it's not like he really had to figure anything out, but I guess, quote unquote, he figured it out this postseason. I look for him to stay hot. I mean, his breaking ball is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And just not the slump, but the Astros bats cooled down a little bit. And you cool down a little bit against a guy like Kershaw, you're going to be in for a long night. So they got to make the most of their opportunities, hitting with runners in scoring position, timely hitting, situational hitting. These are some of the things that you're going to look for in this World Series. Don't expect, Altuve to hit 3 home runs. He could, but you're not going to beat the Dodgers if you expect Altuve to do something like that or bat 600 or anything crazy. So the way that I look at it is the Astros bats could dictate this series. Because if they're not hitting, they have no shot. Because there's only so much that even Verlander, Keuchel, McCullers, Morton, these guys are good arms. But you're only going to be able to shut down the Dodgers for so long. So they gotta show up on offense. Just looking at kind of the matchup here, both teams had really good seasons. But to break it down payroll wise, the Dodgers, their payroll is a little over $265 million. The highest in baseball right now. The Astros payroll, almost $150 million. So you got about $110 million difference in payrolls. And I want to say there was only a couple games in between them record-wise. So that's insane. Another thing to look at, home teams this postseason, 23-8. Home teams are 23-8. So home field advantage in playoff baseball is alive and well. The Dodgers and Astros post a 10-0 record at home this year in the playoffs. So it is clear to see that home field advantage is very important. Very important this year. And with the Dodgers being the home team, quote unquote, in the series, they got 4 games at home versus the Astros 3. If it does go to 7, that makes a huge difference. Looking at what I imagine the rotations are going to be, for the Dodgers, I'm expecting Kershaw, Rich Hill, Darvish, and then Alex Wood. And then they're going to be matched up against Keuchel's going tonight. I would imagine Verlander tomorrow. Then McCullers, Morton, and then probably Keuchel again in Game 5. And then he would be matched up probably against Kershaw in Game 5. That's how I would expect it to go. It's playoff baseball. Anything could happen. Someone could come out of the bullpen. Who really knows? Especially if the Dodgers or the Astros, one of them's up 3-0. They're trying to put the series away, or the other team's trying to, salvage their season. There's going to be some guys coming out of the bullpen that are starters to kind of desperation type moves. My prediction for the series, I'm going Dodgers in 6. And the reason I'm going Dodgers in 6 is, like I said, they have that home field advantage. So if it does go 7, I still would take them in 7. But I think 6, and here's why. I think they're going to win the first 2. Kershaw and Rich Hill at home, they're tough. I think they steal 1 on the road. They lose the other 2 in Houston, so that puts the series at a 3-2. And then I think they finish it off in Game 6 at home. That's something that I definitely expect to happen. That doesn't mean that it's 100% going to happen. But, the Dodgers in 6 seems like a pretty good pick for me. And we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. Now, kind of moving on, like I said, to this Vegas style. Again, I don't have a name for this section 100% yet. But, I think we're going to go with, against the spread.
It's in! You covered, yes, it's good! Are you sure what's the final score? Miami by 4! You covered! 12! I covered! Yes!
What is against the spread?
Or something like that. I'll have to talk with the guys at the network and see. They're a little bit more creative than I am. But we'll have to see what they come up with for the names of this section, and then also the news section, But we're going to start in college football. The first game, I'm going to talk about 5 college football games. I'm going to talk about the NFL, and then I'm going to talk about, I talked about the Dodgers and everything like that. Or the World Series, I should say. But the Dodgers and the Astros, the spread in that game, and what I think about that as well. So we're going to get into those. First, for college football, the first game is number 11, Oklahoma State, and number 22, WVU, West Virginia University. So Oklahoma State's favored by 7.5. The over-under is 73.5. So right now, the over-under, I expect it to be right around that number. The 30s and 40s for this game. Both are super high-powered offenses. If you look at the stats offensively, quarterback play, rushing yards, efficiency, everything like that, they're pretty similar. They are pretty similar statistically, comparatively. The money is on WVU. 74% of the money is on WVU. So I think, in my personal opinion, it's really tough to go against WVU at home in Morgantown. That's a really tough pick to make, especially over a touchdown. If this was 6.5, I might consider it. But to be at that 7.5 mark, I think that's really tough to do. So I'm going with WVU to cover the 7.5. We're going to give them 7.5. I think that's going to be a closer game than people think. WVU is a really good team. I could see them. They could win the game, but I think Oklahoma State's going to end up winning this game by 3 points or so. Even if they win by a touchdown, WVU still covers with the 7.5 right now. So I'm taking WVU plus 7.5. The next game is TCU, which is ranked number 4, and Iowa State, who just cracked the top 25 this week at number 25. And the beginning of the season, if I would have thought that I was going to be talking about this game on this show, I would have probably said this wouldn't have been a game that would have been too exciting. TCU, I did not expect to be this good. I thought they would be a top 20 team, maybe. I don't think they were a top 4 team at all. I don't think we'd be talking about them in the playoff. Also, Iowa State, their big wins this year. I mean, taking down, they took down Oklahoma. They had some great defensive play, which is the reason that the over-under is 57, and 92% of the money is on the under this week for this game. I really like both teams. I really do when I watch. Here's the key here. Kenny Hill, the quarterback for TCU, is going to spread the ball around. I mean, he has 6 wide receivers that have over 10 catches. So you can't just shut down one guy and say, okay, we're going to lock up this offense. TCU on the road gives me a little bit more anxiety than I would like, especially against an Iowa State team who's proven people wrong and again and again. I just think people are really underestimating this TCU team. I think people are sleeping on the Horned Frogs. So I'm going to take them -6. Both teams are super efficient in the red zone. They're both at 90% or 90+% in the red zone. So if it gets into the red zone, I expect TCU to be a little bit more consistent. I think TCU's defense is pretty good. They're a little underrated for what they've been doing this year as well. So I'm going to take TCU -6 on the road. I think they're good enough to beat this Iowa State team by a touchdown at the minimum. I think it's going to be closer to 10 points, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. But I definitely am confident in the TCU pick, but I would have been confident in Oklahoma over Iowa State a couple weeks ago, and we saw how that went. So I'm going to go, like I said, Horned Frogs here all the way, especially to win the game outright. The third game is NC State, number 14. They're 6-1 at Notre Dame, the number 9 ranked Irish, who are also 6-1. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5, and the over/under is 60.5. My initial instinct is 7.5 against NC State is a big number, I think. Now, Notre Dame showed out last week against USC, so I think that's why this line's probably inflated a little bit. If that game would have been a little closer, I think this would have been closer to 4.5, 3.5, something like that. But what they did to USC last week, I think really got this line up a little bit. The money in this game, in this matchup, is pretty much 50-50. It's pretty even across the board. One thing when I was looking at this matchup, NC State, they don't throw the ball a ton, but their quarterback has 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So he's not turning the ball over. If it does get down to the point where they have to throw a little bit, I'm interested to see how he handles any kind of pressure. I haven't watched a lot of NC State games, so I wonder if he's just not pressured, if it's, play action, his guys are open, if it's short passes and his guys break away, what the case is. I'm not going to play the spread on this game just because I think, like I said, I think 7.5 is a little too much against NC State, even though Notre Dame's at home. NC State's defense is really good. They're really aggressive. They have the ability to contain the run, which is what Notre Dame likes to do, and they can get after that quarterback. So Notre Dame's allowed, I forget what it was. It was like 10 sacks or something like that. Not an absurd amount, but it's enough to raise an eyebrow where if they have to throw and abandon the run, can that line hold up? Can they prevent NC State's defensive line and linebackers to get into the backfield and penetrate any draw plays, anything like that? Or especially if they, like I said, if they have to throw, they could be in trouble stopping some sacks and big losses and stuff like that, turnovers. So NC State probably keeps us within a touchdown. You know, I would think. I was a little bit more confident in if this was the line last week picking NC State. Like I said, Notre Dame's win last week was huge in this matchup, putting the line where it is. So I don't know how influential that was. I would say it's pretty big. What I would play on this game is I would play the under 60.5. I expect it to be a pretty low scoring game. I don't think Notre Dame's going to put up 40 points again. And I don't know if NC State's going to put up 30 points on their own. I could see this game being a 28-24 game, something along those lines. So I definitely think the under is the play. But you know, Notre Dame's a good team, and there were people picking NC State to make it to the playoff, and you know that early loss they had, kind of moved them back a little bit. This is going to be an interesting matchup to watch. I think it's going to be, if you like hard-hitting defensive matchups, I think this is going to be one that you would be interested in seeing, especially with NC State playing in it. So like I said, again, I'm playing the under here. The next matchup, I'm going to go to the Georgia Bulldogs and the Florida Gators. So here's my thing with this matchup. Florida is 3-3. They are horrendous on offense. Absolutely terrible. Georgia is the number 3 team in the country, 7-0. Pretty surprised that they're that good. I thought it was going to take a couple of years for them to kind of get to this level with Kirby Smart as their coach. He hasn't even had like a full 2 years of recruiting class in there. So Georgia's favored by 14. That's an awful lot in a rivalry game. That's an awful lot. This game's in Jacksonville. No one really has the home field, but I mean this year the game's always at Jacksonville. The over-under is 43.5, which in a college game these days is pretty low. But this matchup has gone under the last 3 times in 6 of the last 7 games. So with the fact that it's a rivalry game and the overall trend of them going under, I would take the under. I really want to say I would take Florida plus 14, but their offense is just so bad that if Georgia scores 24 points, 28 points, they could cover that 14, because I'm not confident in Florida scoring against Georgia's defense. So I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm going to go with the under 43.5 as my big pick here. And then the last game, we're going to go with the big matchup of the weekend. Number 2 Penn State versus number 6 Ohio State in the Horseshoe. Kind of surprised that this Ohio State is favored by 6.5, and the over-under is 65.5. Both teams are phenomenal. If you've had the opportunity to watch Penn State, they have some of the best talent in the country. Obviously, they're number 2. It's really hard to pick against Ohio State and Urban Meyer in the Horseshoe, but I'm picking Penn State to cover the 6.5, and I like Penn State to win outright. I think Penn State's the real deal this year. I think they're that good. And if they get past this game, they're in a really good spot to solidify that spot in the playoffs. This is a big win. This is a marquee matchup. This is what the committee needs to see from them. You know, that Michigan game last week would have been something that they could put on their resume. Michigan hasn't looked very good. So this is that game. Ohio State's always a tough team to play, never mind at home. So if you go out win on the road, you're going to have a definite, I wouldn't say a definite spot, but you definitely are going to get the attention from the voters. And I like Penn State to not only cover the 6.5, or not say cover, but to be within 6.5 and to win this game outright. That's where I'm going with that game. So that's the college football section of this. Next, I'm going to go straight into kind of a rapid fire because there's so many NFL games. I wouldn't say so many, but we're going to go through the whole slate. So, starting Thursday night, Miami at Baltimore. Baltimore's -3. I'm taking Miami +3. Baltimore has not shown me, their defense is all right, but their offense has not shown me enough where I think they're going to win this game. Even though they're at home, I think I'm on the Matt Moore train. I think he's going to come in. I think he's going to play well enough to win the game anyway. And if Baltimore does squeak this one out, it might be a late field goal to win, but I don't think they're going to cover the 3. The next game, Minnesota at Cleveland. Minnesota they're just not my cup of tea. I'm not confident in them at all either. My biggest thing with them is, can their quarterbacks play up to the standard they need? I don't think they will. I do not think they will. I think they're going to win the game. I don't know if they're going to win by 10 or cover the 9.5. So I'm going Cleveland plus 9.5, but Minnesota wins the game. Chicago and New Orleans. This is a game that is really intriguing to me because New Orleans seems to be banging on all cylinders. Chicago has been pretty impressive to me. Playing New Orleans in New Orleans, that dome, it's going to be loud. I'm going to take New Orleans to cover the 9. I think Drew Brees is a phenomenal quarterback. He's having a great season already. I think he's going to continue that, and he's going to put up some points against the Chicago defense, and they're going to cover the 9. Atlanta is -4 against the Jets. If this would have been -4 at the beginning of the year, I would have put my 401k on this. I would have took out a second mortgage, whatever I needed to do to get this, put my life savings and get some loan money and put it on Atlanta -4, because there's no way they're going to not beat the Jets by at least a touchdown. Now, I'm glad that I didn't do that, and I'm glad this line wasn't there in the beginning, because I have no idea what's going on in Atlanta. They are a mess. They're a mess. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what's going on. And the Jets they're not awful. They were supposed to be awful, and they're playing all right. They're playing all right. That defense is good. I wouldn't even say they're average. I would say their defense is above average. I want to say Atlanta figures it out and is able to win by a touchdown still, but I don't know. I'm taking Atlanta -4 just because I think they are able to cover, and I think they do figure enough out to beat the Jets by a touchdown. So I'm going to take them -4. But it's really difficult for me to say that they're going to be banging on all cylinders. The next game, Carolina at Tampa Bay. Carolina looked awful last week. I think that's going to continue. They're going to kind of have that hangover. Give me Tampa Bay -2.5. San Francisco at Philadelphia. This is a big line here for an NFL game, -13. Carson Wentz right now is my MVP. He is my MVP right now. There's no... he's playing out of his mind. And I think he is making his case to be kind of that elite, that next group of elite quarterbacks and kind of leading that way. And San Francisco is horrendous. So as big of a line as 13 is in the NFL, I expect Philly to cover this one pretty easily. Oakland at Buffalo. Buffalo's favored by 2.5. I think Oakland wins outright. I think we see another game for Derek Carr having another good game. Amari Cooper gets back into his rhythm and everything like that, like we saw last week. I expect them to win outright and definitely be able to keep this within 2.5. Indianapolis at Cincinnati. Cincinnati -10. Indianapolis is bad. I don't know if they're 10 points worse than the Bengals. I'm going to say Indianapolis keeps it within 10. And that's pure gut feeling. When I look at it on paper, I think, yeah, Cincinnati could probably win this game by 2 touchdowns. I'm going gut feeling here. I think Indianapolis keeps it within 10. The Chargers at New England. The Chargers New England is favored by 7.5. That's why I paused there for a second. I was like, there's no way the Chargers are favored. The New England's favored by 7.5. They're at home. Defense seems to be, knock on wood, doing pretty well. Offense is working some kinks out. I think we see New England start to get towards that November, December type New England team we see, and they start banging on all cylinders. -7.5. They're definitely going to cover that this week. I have a very good feeling about that. Houston at Seattle. Seattle playing extremely well. Houston, they are. I really like the team they have. I really like Deshaun Watson playing quarterback for them. I think he's going to be, their franchise guy. He's going to have a tough matchup this week against Seattle. I think Seattle covers the 5.5. Pittsburgh at Detroit. Pittsburgh favored by 3. Pittsburgh on the road favored by 3. I think they cover. We've had a lot of issues with them and different personalities on the team not being happy with their play calling, not being happy with the targets or the amount of carries or anything like that. If they all just shut up and start playing, they have the talent to be a contender in the AFC. They are a contender in the AFC. I think they beat Detroit by a touchdown, 10 points, something like that. They cover the 3. Denver at Kansas City. Kansas City coming off 2 straight losses, I believe. Kansas City at home, favored by 7.5. I'm going to go Denver plus the 7.5. I think Kansas City is going to win this game outright. But for them to cover the 7.5, I think it's going to be a little tougher than people expect, even though they're at home. So I am going to go Denver plus 7.5, even though we see Kansas City bounce back and win the game overall. The last part of this section is the World Series. So the World Series, they are... Let me take a look at what the line is for the World Series tonight. So Game 1 is tonight, and I believe it is the Dodgers by 1.5. But let me get there and see. Yes. The Dodgers are favored by 1.5. So they're minus 1.5. The over-under is 7. I'm going to go with Houston plus 1.5. I think Keuchel is one of those crafty lefties. He's going to keep the ball down. He doesn't throw the ball, 95 plus. He's going to be 91, 92. I think he's going to get a lot of ground balls. I think he's going to keep the ball in the yard. And I think that this is going to be a one-run game. And if the Dodgers are going to win this game, it's not going to be by Bellinger or Puig or any of those guys hitting, 500-foot home runs off of Keuchel. It's going to be timely hitting and everything like that. I expect a little bit of a low-scoring game, kind of a 4-3 game, 5-4 game, so I'm not going to play the over-under. I think that's a good line there. But I definitely think Houston can keep this within 2. If this game gets out of hand early and Keuchel's on the mound, they're going to be in some trouble the rest of the series because they're not going to be able to swing the sticks. They have the ability to, but they haven't shown it in the last series, and the pitching for the Dodgers is exceptional. So I think this game is going to be telling. They need to keep this game close. Even if they lose it, they need to keep this game close. I think Houston keeps it within a run, and that's kind of all I got for that game. The money, just so you guys understand, the money is 54% on the over and 52% on the Dodgers. So it's pretty even. And that's something that I would expect it to be. First pitch is at 8:09. So I'm definitely going to be tuning in. I'm a big baseball guy, as most of you know. So I'll be tuning into that. Please subscribe, share your thoughts on the show. Any suggestions for names or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me or the guys at the B.S.N network. And until next time, guys, take care.